Hello and welcome back to the channel, guys. It's been a minute since I've uploaded on here. You joined me in the CLS 55. The CLS 55 has been running great, it's been running strong, and in the past few months I've just been enjoying it. And as far as the SL 55 goes, I have a couple updates regarding that I do need to get to. But as for now, we're headed to the shop. And the reason why we're headed to the shop, if you guys have seen my previous videos, you guys have seen me work on my dad's lift. But you've noticed in the background, there's a second lift. The second lift is currently occupied by one of my dad's like mystery barn cars. And so we're gonna get to that. But able to get to that, there's another project that needs to be done, and that is a boat. Now, I understand what some of you guys are thinking. Why is this even a project? Well, you see, my dad acquired this boat back in 2019 for free by one of his customers who works at a boat salvage auction. And the customer wasn't even the original owner of the boat. They acquired it by a relative, and somehow the topic came up to my dad, and my dad said, a free boat and all I need to do is restore the interior? Why not? Let's do it. Unfortunately, this project was a lot bigger than he anticipated. The previous owner had left this boat sitting outside uncovered for many years. A lot of rain happened throughout those years, and because of that, the boat filled up with water. Normally, if you have a boat, you would open this plug up if you're gonna have it sit outside uncovered, allowing for all the rain to come out instead of it pooling up in the bottom of the boat. That didn't happen with this. The drain plug was still in the boat, and for a decent amount of its life, it sat like that and basically rotted away up until when my dad picked it up. And when he picked it up, the boat had so much mold on it, he had to wear a hazmat suit to clean up the leather in the boat. And when he finally stripped out the interior, he realized that this project went from something that he could have done in a week to something that's going to take much longer. The entire wooden floor of the boat had completely dry rotted and needed to be replaced. So he went ahead and replaced the whole entire floor of the boat. When he got done with that, the registration for the boat was missing. It wasn't in the place where he last kept it. He somehow lost it. And because of that, he was afraid to continue working on the boat. He stopped working on the boat and it sat idle until he was able to get a new title in hand. A couple months goes by, he finally gets the title in hand. At that point, the motivation to work on the boat was starting to die down. On top of that, work was starting to pick up for him. So a couple months goes by before he replaces the floorboard on the boat. And the burnout from all that work basically made him super unmotivated to work on the boat. That is until June of 2023. At that point, we had finished the CLS 55 and I wanted to do another project. So I told Dad, hey, let me come into the shop, help you out on the boat, clear out that rack. And also it's June and the Delta is near my house. I really wanted to take the boat out on the Delta. So I went to the shop to help Dad make some progress on the boat and essentially do what I'm doing now in November of 2024. We essentially removed the power head, which is the engine, midsection, which is the exhaust housing, and the lower unit, which is the gearbox. All of that sandwiched a piece of wood that was attached to the chassis. When we removed everything, that block of wood had completely rotted from all the water that accumulated over the past couple of years. My dad's shop neighbor works on boats for a living, and he advised him to completely replace the block of wood. So after that point, my job there was put on pause until Dad was able to replace that block of wood, in which he did a couple of months ago, and that's where we are today. Because of that, the project's been sitting pretty idle, and I'm basically telling him like, hey, let me work on this project for you so I can, you know, work on the other project that you have, help you get through it. He's 62, he's gonna be retiring sometime soon. I figured it's probably best for us to just take YouTube as a early way to ease him into retirement. My job today is to sand and prime the surface area for the engine to get inside the boat. Once we finish the boat, I want to do more videos like that. He's got some really unique tips here and there. All that being said, I'm on my way to the shop right now. I'm about to pull up and we're just gonna start working on that project. So it's been about an hour since I've gotten to the shop. This is the boat in question that I'm gonna be working on. I know it's like literally buried under a lot of stuff. I mean, my dad's shop has gotten much more crowded since the last time I came here. I told him that, so that's gonna be fun cleaning up with him. But anyways, this is the boat, and let's go ahead and take a tour of the inside. So the inside of the boat, this is what we are working with. This is all ready to go for carpet and whatnot. That's the engine right there, and that's the thing that sits in between the engine and this wall. I basically have to sand this down. There's a bit of epoxy over it. I have to sand it down, and to do that, I have this electric sander that also doubles as a vacuum that I'll be using. I need to get a mask and some glasses, and I'm gonna get to sanding. Once I get that done, clean it up, and then apply a layer of resin over it. This is all new to me, so this is gonna be fun. Anyway, let's get to the time lapse. Sanding down resin can be quite dangerous if you breathe in the airborne particles. My dad's good friend and shop neighbor run and operate Apex Safety. They were able to supply me with some really good gear to protect myself, so I wore a double layer of N95 mask, and then I wore another layer of a normal mask. On top of that, I got safety goggles, brand new box of leather gloves, and cloth gloves, ear protection. Okay, I finished sanding this. Dad wants me to sand that and that, so I guess I'm gonna do that now. I used 60 grit sandpaper to sand down everything that you see here, and I basically got it all done in about an hour. One thing that I learned when sanding this whole entire piece was that if you tilt the sander at an angle, it'll get more of the material off than if you just have it laying flat. But anyways, this is the final result, and now it's time for me to vacuum up all the dust. And it's a lot more dust than I thought it would be, simply because a dust collector in my sander was not working whatsoever. And now with everything cleaned up, it was time for me to put on a layer of epoxy over everything I just sanded. And this is going to be a little unconventional, but the layer of epoxy that we're going to be using is the same epoxy that you would use to lay over on the floor of your garage. But I'm going to be honest with you, this actually came out really nice. It's now the next day, and the layer of epoxy has completely cured, and it's time for us to start boring out these holes so we can fit the motor mount and the midsection together. But unable to do that, we have to bore out these holes for the studs to fit through them, and the studs are attached to the midsection, and they only go in one specific way. Dad used the old board as a template to make these holes. One thing he forgot to take into account was the angle that these holes go through on that wood. So you're gonna see that causes a little bit of a problem later down the line. This right here is basically the transmission of the whole entire drivetrain system. You could see some of these studs are angled up a little bit, but it's time for us to clean it up. So Dad went ahead, grabbed a bottle of brake clean, and he started cleaning up this whole entire thing. The side that we're cleaning will be the side that's facing the block of wood, so we're not necessarily worried about having to replace anything as far as gaskets go. We're just gonna RTV seal everything. You can see Dad over here putting a little cushion at the tip of these cables.
So now what we do, we have to see if it works perfectly fine. We're gonna put it first there, make sure the holes are okay, and once we see it fits everything, then we get the gasket. The sealer, I'm gonna put that, and then we put it for the last time.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, let's take it out. Down.
So we went back and forth trying to figure out how to bore out these holes. In the end, what we basically did, we bored out every single hole, but specifically the bottom left hole. That one was giving us the hardest time. The stud was going up at an angle while the hole was going straight. So we had to bore that hole up at an angle, and we needed some more powerful tools. So we went ahead and got a corded drill and a much larger and durable drill bit to bore out these holes. You can see Dad's boring out the little drain plug that I mentioned a lot earlier. This is very important because this is what caused this whole entire project to go out of hand. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So now we know that everything is good.
With it fitting in perfectly now, it was time for us to take it back out and to fill in those holes for the studs with resin and RTV glue it back into place. So I went ahead, yanked it off, and put it off to the side while Dad went ahead and took care of applying his resin into those holes. Once he got done applying the resin, he went ahead and RTV sealed the whole entire outer portion of the transmission. And then we went ahead and installed that drive back into place, and now it was time for him to apply RTV Seal all over those studs so we can securely watertight this whole entire thing and make sure that whatever happened last time never ever happens again. Dad went ahead and sandwiched the motor mount and the drive together, and when he got done with that, it was time for him to go ahead, sort out all those wires that are in there and prepare the whole entire mount for the engine to go in there. But before he could prepare that up, there was still one more piece that needed to go in there. That was part of the exhaust. But I went home early that night, so I never got to see the exhaust get installed. It's now the next day, and it's time for us to mount this engine onto the boat.
Can you put it down?
Previously, when we yanked the engine out of the boat, we used a really long bar to lift up the engine and move it aside. This time that wasn't going to work, so we ended up using a engine lift to put it in, and this was kind of easy given the fact that this engine hoist is quite big and long. I'm good by hand. That's right, you used to own it. I promise you, if I damage it, it won't be noticeable. Is it up?
Now, go back a little bit. Back a little bit. More.
Real gentle to me.
Okay, stop. Slowly.
Like you're barely opening it, really slowly. Oh.
Was it supposed to do that?
Stop. That's it. It sits already.
Putting the engine back in was a lot easier than taking it out. Thanks to that lift, it was super fun, and huge shout out to Brad for recording the whole entire thing while Dad and I put this engine back in. We went ahead and put the bolts inside those mounts, and now with the engine in place, it's time for us to focus on the propeller. Before we can install the propeller, we have to wait for a couple gaskets to come in. Those have already been ordered and they should be in by the time you guys are watching this video. And I know it's different from what I normally post here on YouTube, but I did learn a lot doing this whole entire project with my dad. It's not done yet. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys when I upload part 2 of this series.